let me hit that breaking news, shall we? Kathleen Kennedy has finally decided to step away from Lucasfilm, and it looks like it's going to be happening by the end of the year. She's going to exit her role as the CEO, or as like the chair, basically the president of Lucasfilm, I should say. And it comes at a time when a lot of people don't know what the heck is going on with the world of Star Wars. Rumors swirling that it's complete chaos over there. But Puck dropped the news earlier today, John. I want to bring you in on this. Sorry, I had to knock out the music because we got to get into the conversation here. It's breaking news. Let's talk about it. Puck dropped this news earlier tonight. Kathleen Kennedy stepping down at Lucasfilm. This was something that was rumored last year and then never came to pass, and I guess it's happening now. It's been a 13-year run. She was the hand-picked choice to run Lucasfilm, that George Lucas was like, you know what? She's the next person to do this. And her resume and her just overall filmography as a producer is probably unmatched, or matched by very few. Like maybe Kevin Feige is probably one of the very few who can say he's had as much success as a producer as Kathleen Kennedy has. And now after 13 years of leading Lucasfilm under Disney ownership, it looks like, you know, as far as what she has informed Disney and her close family and friends, she's going to be leaving Lucasfilm by the end of the year. I will pull up the article here from the Hollywood Reporter that goes into a little bit more. But John, before we dive into any more of the details of the reasoning behind it, what are your thoughts on this? Are you surprised? Because I mean, it is breaking news. It seems like it's been a long time coming, but we've been waiting for it for a long time. People maybe at some point started to believe it was never going to happen, but here it is. It looks like she's, you know, stepping away rather than being fired necessarily. It's like of own accord. Maybe she's retiring. What are your thoughts on again just the news, and what do you think brought about the change?
The fact that Star Wars fucking sucks now and everyone's blaming her. Maybe that's the thing. Joking aside, it's just like I feel like maybe she's just reached a point where she just doesn't really want to do this anymore. And she just doesn't want to, you know, deal with all this shit. Maybe it's like all the internet hate getting to her head. Maybe it's just like, I'm older and I don't want to deal with this. Like, same reason why Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson are stepping down as creative consultants, well, creative forces behind James Bond. It's just like, people get sick of this shit. It's a lot. It fucking makes your hair fall out. I would know. So it's just a lot, and they don't want to do this shit. And get out. But it could be because like half of the stuff, like the people have lost interest in Star Wars. There's been a lot of investments that have not paid off. Look at the Star Wars hotel, $1 billion investment that's now getting turned into office buildings.
Dude, that was a huge miss, because they were like, oh, people want to spend all this extra money going, like, Star Wars was never like an elite luxury kind of a good. It was for the people. Star Wars has always been a franchise for everyone to enjoy. So you can't make a product that only appeals to the, you know, the richest of the rich and expect it to succeed. Like, that's I don't understand what the philosophy or thinking behind that was, but as you guys are saying in the chat, it's party time for hardcore Star Wars fans. A lot of people are going to be happy. And then TC24, I think, mentioned something really, really poignant and probably very accurate, saying that she's, you know, looking to go out on a high with the Mandalorian Grogu movie coming out, which is potentially going to be the last. It's not going to be the last project necessarily that's been, you know, put into production under her watch, because obviously we still have that, you know, Rey movie somewhere in the development. There's like a million other things that are still going on. We talked about
that. I bet when the new guy comes in, he's just trashing all of that.
I'm like James Mangold, like all of that, like his movie. There's, I mean, Dave Filoni is still going to be around potentially. John Favreau,
great either.
I mean, who takes over? So let's kind of like go through and there's a couple of follow-up questions that this all leads to, right? Obviously, I think it seems like she's, you know, based on her comments to her inner circle, she's been charting a course to make this happen, and it looks like she's trying to wrap up her affairs as the president of Lucasfilm by the end of the year. And they're using the word retirement, so it's not like she's been kicked out or been given a golden parachute. So where does this leave us in terms of Lucasfilm? Do you think they already have a leader, like a potential successor in mind? Obviously, George Lucas picked Kathleen Kennedy for the job. who picks her successor? Is it going to be Bob Iger? Because you got to remember, Bob Iger also only came back for a limited amount of time. I think he's also going to be retiring again in a year or two. So like, where do we
Brett
go
Favre's
next?
out of here.
But like, who do you think would be a good pick to kind of take over potentially for Kathleen Kennedy? And you guys in the live chat, let us know who do you think would be a good pick. Is it Dave Filoni? Is it Jon
anybody with
Favreau?
half a fucking brain would be nice. Like anybody like that, whoever it is. It's just like no matter. It's just one of those things where it's like, no matter what you do, it's not this. It's not going to save anything. Like people are like, oh yeah, Star Wars is going to come back. Hardcore fans are so excited. This shit, like there's so many nails in this coffin that it's like one of those old-fashioned torture devices where they have like the fucking spears going in and like what was it, an Iron Maiden. It's like there's so many nails in this coffin, it has turned into an Iron Maiden. Like this franchise creatively is bankrupt. There's nothing they can. It went so beyond corporate. It's just a non-entity now. Like that's all it is. I mean, there's still fans. There's people that still like it, and they'll keep it alive. But it's just like Star Wars at its core is gone, and that's never coming back. Like it's just there's so many people that are just done with it. And I'm not talking about like the racists and the sexists and all that shit. I'm talking about people that are just so innately like done, like me. I just can't care anymore. Like for me, Star Wars ended in 1983. It began in 77 and ended in 83, and that's how I will live with that because that's what I am happy with. Because it's bereft of passion. I am not that man. I know I'm quoting Star Trek, but like it works. It's just bereft of life, of passion. Like that's what this franchise has become. It's just nothing. It's like a whole bunch of nothing, and it's just corporate decisions catering to demographics instead of creating these great stories, and it's just focusing on the messages of things rather than doing all these great, and it's just nothing, and it's sad. I'm sure there's great things. I mean, Andor, we were just talking about that, people like that, but it's just nothing now.
The biggest thing that I think has dragged her reputation down in recent years is she was a great producer. She's probably one of the greatest of all time. Like, you know, the list of movies, she's produced almost every big movie that Steven Spielberg worked on back in the day. E.T., give me another one. Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. It's like George Lucas. She worked with George Lucas through a lot of his projects. She's got a resume that is unmatched in that way. And she's had a few good hits with Star Wars too, because if you guys remember, The Mandalorian was an idea where I think Dave Filoni was kicking it around, and then she was like, you know what, I think Jon Favreau's your man, and she kind of put the two guys together, and that's how we got The Mandalorian. So she knows what she's doing as a producer. She's a great producer, but it clearly, being a great producer has not translated into being a great film executive, running a film studio. We're recently been talking about how, sorry, there's a fly in my face. We've been recently been talking about how James Gunn and Peter Safran have been doing a fantastic job running a studio, but there's a reason why the two of them are co-CEOs. Is because James Gunn is a great director, creative, a producer potentially as well, but a producer in the sense that he's more on the creative side. Peter Safran is more closer to what Kathleen Kennedy has been throughout her career, which is more of the physical production producer. Like she gets all the pieces together, she coordinates everything and makes sure things get done. And being that, and then also knowing how to put together the creative side of the business of your studio. Mm-hmm. Those are two different things, and clearly, DC has, and David Zaslav, give him some credit, hiring the two of those guys, Peter Safran and James Gunn, together shows some foresight in that he knew that neither one of them would by themselves be.
I mean, James Gunn denied them for so long. He's like, I don't want to do this because I don't know business. I'm not that guy. And then they were like, well, the guy who's been with the DCU for a while, Peter Safran, why don't we get him? And he's like, okay, now we're cooking with gas. So they're going to do that. And it seems like, yeah, we have our problems. We have our complaints. They have their flaws with like marketing and stuff like that. But for the most part, they've made a lot of creative decisions. They've made a lot of business decisions that I feel like are good and finally propelling this company forward in all the right ways.
Yeah. So, and you know what? It's I guess it continues to show that, you know, somebody like a Kevin Feige, that's more of a unicorn than we maybe give him credit for, because it's rare that you see somebody with the skill set of a Kevin Feige, of a Kathleen Kennedy, of a Peter Safran, who also then is as, you know, how should we say it, as well versed in the comic book lore like Kevin Feige, but also he had a lot of experience working specifically with Marvel projects throughout the 2000s. He worked on all the X-Men projects, and so Kevin Feige grew up, or like, you know, he definitely earned his keep as a producer on Marvel properties well before he was, you know, the producer for the MCU, the lead man in charge. But
I mean, Kevin Feige snuck Wolverine comics to fucking Hugh Jackman on the first X-Men when Bryan Singer, the director, barred comics from set because he's a fucking moron.
Yeah. Well, but see, this is where I think, so speaking of a potential successor now, I think like what Enterprising is saying, Dave Filoni could be a good pick, but only if you then bring him along and have somebody who can who's actually a good film executive next to him, right? Like I would want a Peter Safran, James Gunn situation more so than a Kevin Feige situation, because it's not easy to find a Kevin Feige, and I don't think you can find many other people out there who are as well versed about Star Wars as Dave Filoni is. So while Dave Filoni would be a great pick, I think you need a co-CEO kind of a thing, and I don't even think that's Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau is more like, you know, James Gunn than he's like Peter Safran. So you need to bring in somebody who's got a great mind for the movie business, and then you need, from a business standpoint, and then you need to maybe combine that with somebody who's got the mindset of like a Dave Filoni, maybe Dave Filoni himself, and put together a plan. Right? The Rise of Skywalker happened because they didn't have a plan. Like each director came in and they told them, do your thing. Like that's why Rian Johnson basically ended a trilogy in the second movie, and then they had to be like, whoa, undo half of that stuff, take a U-turn somehow. Somehow Palpatine returned, and then we got the movie that we did. Wasting, quite frankly, the talents of Daisy Ridley, Oscar Isaac, John Boyega, and everybody else involved in those movies. Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers is no longer with us, but I mean, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau have been the two lead men. But I do hope that, you know, if they were to kind of pass this on, whoever the next person comes in, look, even if they do bring in somebody who's just going to be in charge of the production of you know, being a movie executive, make sure that they're not the ones making the creative decisions. Like with James Gunn, I'm sure Peter Safran and James Gunn don't agree on everything, but at the very least, the teamwork clearly is there and they're in sync. So they want to make sure that the creative decisions ultimately are being made the right way. And Peter Safran has also been involved with a lot of DC production. He did a lot of the DCEU movies. He produced all the Aquaman movies, the Shazam movies. So he knows a thing or two. And I think so far the collaboration has been great. I mean, maybe JJ Abrams comes back. He runs his own production company. He's always looking for deals. I wouldn't trust that as him to be the savior.
Yeah, Rise of Skywalker made $1 billion, but it also like was the most hated Star Wars movie of all time.
Yeah.
So,
but again, like TC24 pointing out, like Dave Filoni, like he sometimes has a tendency to lean too heavily into his own characters, like trying to shove Ahsoka into everything, and then giving her a second season when the first season gave us no reason to believe that show needed to stick around any longer than it already has. And you know, he's obviously, the Clone Wars is his baby, so he really loves those characters. But it does put quite the, well, at the same, while a lot of people are going to be happy that this is a change that's happening, it does put a lot of uncertainty ahead for a franchise that was already really, you know, facing a lot of uncertainty. And let's not forget, Lucasfilm also houses Indiana Jones, which is also a franchise that is in need of a refresh. So whoever's coming in, their priorities have to be, okay, I'm
Well, and then
succeeding
nobody gives
Kathleen
a fuck
Kennedy.
about Willow.
But
Nobody gives a fuck about
that's true.
THX
You
and
can't even.
American
It's not even
Graffiti.
on Disney Plus. It took it off the streaming service.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Kathleen Kennedy has quite the resume. So whoever's following in her footsteps already has got to follow up her performance. Because look, even though she had like 7 movies where they would put it into production and then be like, oh, creative differences, the director leaves, whether it's Patty Jenkins or Taika Waititi or even Kevin Feige, who at one point was going to work in a movie, and I think the director of Fantastic Four was going to be directing a movie that Kevin Feige would produce, and then that never happened. So it seemed like there just never was an overall direction, and obviously the last Willow series, the last Indiana Jones movie, both didn't do very well at the box office, with critics, with audiences. So whoever's coming in has a pressure to revive all of those franchises, especially Star Wars, but then also move the needle forward and do it in a way which feels coherent while being under a microscope, probably one of the biggest microscopes in all of Hollywood, because it's Lucasfilm, it's Star Wars. So I don't know. That's a lot of pressure, man. Like I don't think there's gonna be a lot of people lining up to take this job, but whoever does, they're gonna have a job cut out for them. Because like, yeah, it was difficult for James Gunn and Peter Safran to come into DC from where the reputation of DC has been in recent years. But I feel like this is an even bigger job, especially considering there's all these things that are like all these irons that are in the fire. Like, what do you do with all the projects that are ongoing? Do you let them play out, or do you on day one clean house and start over? Like, what do you think is going to happen, John? Do you have care to guess what's going to happen with that Ray movie? What is going to happen with that James Mangold movie? Like, there's a bunch of other projects that are still in production. What about all the TV series that are still ongoing? Obviously, Andor this year ends. Mandalorian Grogu will wrap up that story. So you've got, I think, more conclusive. You're going to have conclusions to those, but what about everything else that's still coming up in the years to come?
I feel like they're gonna finish everything, but like then just like kind of scorch earth and just kind of try to do something fresh, because clearly people are trying to go for that. But I mean, it's like Harrison Ford like really does not want to let that character go, so we'll see. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's a whole, as I've said my piece. Like at this point, it's just I don't care who does it. Like no matter what, it's like no matter who comes in, it's just gonna suck.
Yeah.
It's still gonna suck. Like it's not, unless you fucking bring in Jesus Christ himself to perform a miracle, then this company is not gonna be better. And it might be better for some people, but like, and they might still like, as long as they make money, then they're happy. And Kathleen Kennedy, I guess, wasn't making money, or she just didn't want to deal with shit, so she left.
Well, I mean, she's retiring and all. She's had a really, long career, long successful career, and I think being finally out of the spotlight would probably help. Look, she's still a human being, right? Like everybody, like James Gunn was mentioning, like we're all human beings. Like we get frustrated, exasperated. He said he's not on social media as much as he used to be just for the sake of his mental health. So understandably, she sees all the criticism. She sees all the, especially Star Wars. Hardcore Star Wars fans can be really brutal. So yeah, I mean, figure drawing is like no matter who comes in, it's just gonna suck. Yeah, well, that's John. I understand what you're saying, but yeah, from a human being's perspective, I get that she wants to retire and step out of the spotlight. Here's what I'm gonna suggest.
I like what DC 24 said. They're like John saying we need the Rapture to fix Star. We need God himself to fucking come in and fix Star Wars. That's what we
Yeah. Hardcore Star Wars fans can be even worse than Snyder cultists. That's true, Ron. And you know what? Yes, figure drawing. I think she's earned more than enough money
Children,
to
you're
retire
both,
comfortably.
you're
And
both
it's
just terrible. That's all.
this is hold, but hold the phone for a second, because I want to suggest something. Kevin Feige is a huge Star Wars fan.
Holding the
Earlier, you guys were suggesting. I mean, Rob Liefeld would tell you that he, get him off the mound. He's past it. So maybe Kevin Feige now sees this opportunity. He says, "Okay, I've got a year now to prepare. Let me get all the Marvel stuff in order. Maybe I've got a successor in mind there that I was eventually going to pass the baton to. Maybe I'm looking for a new challenge. Maybe I'm out of ideas. Maybe after Secret Wars we go into the Mutant Saga. Maybe I continue to be involved, but not as the leader, the big man in charge. Maybe I want to take on Star Wars. Maybe I want to be the man. It's kind of like the John. The whole reason, like, you're a football fan. I know you're not a huge sports fan, but think about it. A lot of times big sports teams that have fallen by the wayside because of bad management still manage to attract some of the biggest coaches in the world, because they look at it and they say, you know what, I want to be known as the person who brought that team back from the dead. And Kevin Feige was probably going to want to move on to something different eventually. Maybe this is the right time. Maybe it's not a perfect time because he's in the middle of trying to get 2 Avengers movies off the ground. But maybe he says, you know what? That's going to be my next opportunity. I'm going to go and I'm going to do with Star Wars and with Indiana Jones and with maybe even Willow what I did with Marvel. And maybe he just moves across the way on the Disney lot and says, now I'm the leader of Lucasfilm. And who better to trust with a franchise as valuable as Star Wars and Indiana Jones and even, like I said, Willow, than the guy who's made you billions of dollars over the course of like 30 plus movies. And yes, he's had a few duds along the way, but he's had way more hits than pretty much any other producer who's been producing at the level he's been doing it. I mean, John, do you think Kevin Feige looks at this opportunity and says, this is my time, this is my chance, let me go and do this?
I think it might be too much for him. I think it might be too much. I think he might like get one of his underlings to do it, maybe. We'll see, but just yeah, keep him at Marvel. Like doing 2 huge franchises like that, bro would fucking unalive himself. Bro would just put a gun in his mouth like fucking 2 weeks in, like no fucking way, like, I know that's over exaggerated, but like, come on, like these are the two.
No, but
of
he
the
would be the
biggest
one calling the
franchises.
shots, right? And I'm like, people will. There's very few people in Hollywood who are beyond reproach with the fans to the level that Kevin Feige is. I know there's a lot of detractors out there, but there's very few people out there who will look at Kevin Feige and say, "Oh, you know what? We just don't trust you to do a good job," because, like, he could be like, in Thor Ragnarok, my stuff, and Marvel, like, look what I did there. It's like he doesn't even have to go to the interview. He can probably get. And yes, Ron, I was talking about Man United somehow still getting the biggest coaches in the world, as a Man United fan who watched the team under Sir Alex Ferguson with Ronaldo, Rooney, and all that stuff, and winning the Champions Leagues and winning all the Premier Leagues, and now they've got the draw, but
Okay, enough about soccer. We're done with that. I'm gonna keep him muted for a little bit while longer until he stops with the Manchester United.
I'm just like, there's very few people who could walk into an interview like Kevin Feige and literally in one word or one sentence be like, "Give me the job." Like, I don't know. Like,
I mean,
I don't
you
know
could
who
do
else
that
would be
in an
able to do
interview.
that,
It would
right?
just be ballsy. But
But then that would beg the question, like Ron said, who would succeed Kevin Feige at Marvel if that happened? James Gunn is no longer around for the job. James Gunn would have been his right hand man. He's doing things at DC. Do you think if Kevin Feige leaves Marvel, that then Disney tries to buy out James Gunn's contract over at DC and says, "Come on over. We'll pay out Warner Brothers to bring you up." I don't know if James Gunn would even want to do that, considering what he's starting from scratch here at DC. It probably leaves a hole. Like, that's the other thing, right? Like, where Disney might be like, we don't want to ruin a good thing at Marvel just to try to fix Star Wars, or do they? Or do you think Kevin Feige gets a promotion and all of a sudden he's overseeing both? Do you think he has the bandwidth to do both?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, then Enterprising suggesting maybe it's Filoni, and then you bring another executive over at over at Lucasfilm or Disney, and you give them a promotion. Like somebody, like here's the thing, Peter Safran is a name that a lot of people know now because he's a co-CEO of DC Studios. For other than those of us who really are hardcore fans and watch shows like this, or are on shows like this, and we follow the movie news closely, we would have heard of Peter Safran's name because he was a producer, the lead producer on a lot of those DCEU movies. But until he became the co-CEO of DC Studios, most people didn't know who Peter Safran was. Even now, most people don't know who Peter Safran is. Most of the time we talk about DC, we talk about James Gunn because he's the one who's sort of the face of the company. Even though he's only
And
one
he's the
half
one
of the
that
CEO office.
doesn't shut up on threads.
Right.
Twitter.
So maybe this other executive alongside Dave Filoni could become the James Gunn of DC Studios for Lucasfilm, and essentially the other person could be somebody who most of us don't know about, but they're really good at their job, like Peter Safran has been, and then that could be the way to go. It will be interesting though, considering that Dave Filoni has not done anything to that scale. I would venture a guess that maybe Jon Favreau would be ahead in that race, and then Dave Filoni could be like the prodigy that's
I don't
in
think
training.
Jon Favreau would want to do it because, again, he's more of a director. Like, he was more of the creative side. I don't think he's not a businessman. So
no, but I'm saying like maybe more of a creative in the sense that how James Gunn operates in a co-CEO capacity, right?
I guess so. But even then, I don't know. I don't think they want to. They might, like, if they do that, they'll be like, "Why are you ripping off DC?" And they don't want to do that. So
yeah, well, the other name you could potentially look. I don't think this is gonna happen, but maybe you bring in somebody like a Steven Spielberg. I know Steven Spielberg has his own company, but he still likes to direct movies. I think he's too old to want to take on a challenge that big. But and obviously he's always worked with Kathleen Kennedy as a producer. But I'm just thinking of like names out there potentially who could come in, take over, whether it's Ron Howard or maybe J.J. Abrams, Michael Bay. I'm just thinking of names of guys who have moved on to the producing side and moved away from directing. But I think
Chris
the most
Columbus.
likely, Chris Columbus might not be so bad. I wouldn't mind Chris Columbus coming in. Maybe George Lucas comes back from retirement. Maybe George Lucas comes out of retirement. That would be funny.
He's like, "Fuck no! You really think I'm gonna come back? How fucking stupid do you think I am?"
He's like, I'm gonna bring. You know how in an episode of SpongeBob when Mr. Krabs sells the Krusty Krab, and then he goes back and buys it with the same dumb truck of money that he got from selling the Krusty Krab. Maybe we will see George Lucas come back with the dumb truck and back up the Brinks truck with the $4 billion and whatever interest he accrued on it over the years to pay up.
He donated that to charity. He doesn't have any of that anymore. But I just like, no, I think it would be more like, I don't know. I don't think he would. I don't think he's like, fucking stupid. What do you think I am? No way.
Rian Johnson also said that he was very he was still working potentially on his Star Wars series of movies, and his producing partner and him are obviously the ones who created the Knives Out universe for Netflix. So maybe they take this opportunity and they can be like, we could be the Peter Safran and James Gunn of DC Studios for Lucasfilm. Maybe that could be an option. Again, potential, like Matt Reeves and Dylan Clark, producing partners. Matt Reeves directs, Dylan Clark produces. I feel like for Disney, rather than looking for a unicorn like Kevin Feige, they should go with more what they're trying to do, or what they have been doing at DC with David Zaslav bringing in Peter Safran and James Gunn. And as far as who, there's probably very few people on a very small list who probably would even be qualified. But Kathleen Kennedy, she leaves behind a legacy as a producer, one of just tremendous amount of success, but as the leader, as the head of Lucasfilm, while handpicked by George Lucas, like Sir Alex Ferguson picked David Moyes for Manchester United, maybe she wasn't the best person for the job, because I mean she's had a few hits, but along the way she's had a lot of misses. So let's see where things go from here. But breaking news today, we wanted to talk about it. The prolific producer, one of the best of all time, Kathleen Kennedy, looks like she's expected to retire this year. She's been telling her inner circle, her associates, her friends, her family that she's lining things up so she can retire at the end of the year. Now, this is not something where we've got an official press release, but the puck broke the news. We've been talking about it for the last little while. A lot of you guys thinking, maybe Filoni could be the next person who can come in, and he would probably get the vote of confidence from the fans. I think the next pick has to be somebody that the fans also embrace, and maybe he could be the one to do that. But hey, wherever they go, whichever direction they go in with the future of this Lucasfilm as a studio, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow, Kathleen
American
Kennedy's
Graffiti.
American Graffiti. Kathleen Kennedy's term, and her time in charge of Lucasfilm is coming to an end. Finally, probably a year later than a lot of people thought it would, or years after a lot of people probably would have liked for it to. But Mandalorian and Grogu coming up soon, Andor season 2 coming up this year. So there's still a few good things, on the horizon for Star Wars. And then beyond that, we'll see where things go, whether it's a James Mangold movie or whether it is a Taika Waititi project that's maybe still in the works somewhere. That Rey movie that that might still be happening. Or maybe Kevin Feige comes back and says, you know what, I will produce that Star Wars movie after all. We'll see where things go as the story progresses and evolves. We'll be back here to talk about it as always. So hit that like button while you're here, and if you're new to the channel, then hit the subscribe button. We are live 5 days a week. John, as always, thanks for joining. And if you guys are new, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live with a new show or have a new video going up. But until tomorrow, until the next day and the day after that, guys, have a good rest of your day, evening, morning, afternoon, or night if you're about to head to bed. We'll see you tomorrow on another episode of DCU Daily, and I'm sure we'll have to talk about more Marvel news along the way. Or maybe we'll hear more from the world of Lucasfilm. So until then, John, thank you for all your insights, and thanks to everybody in the live chat. If you weren't here live, then drop your comments down below. What do you think about Kathleen Kennedy or getting ready to retire? So until next time, go out there, watch something DC related, Marvel, whichever, Star Wars. Come back and talk to us about it. We'll see you tomorrow. Another episode of DCU Daily.